Abahu Purushakaram, Shakachakrasi Darinam, Sahasra Shesha Svetam, Pranamane Pitanjalim. Now that the body is warm from the few sun salutations, we're going to be doing a lot of opening up of the hip flexor muscles, the hips, and also the hips around here, working with the glutes, and also the lower back. Also included in this is the psoas muscle. The psoas muscle inserts over here and goes up onto the spine. It has a lot of tension and it has a tendency to pull us downward because it's tight. This is further exacerbated by the fact that we're constantly sitting in a hip flex position in a chair, so that we're constantly in this position, so it trains the hip to be shut down. What we want is to open up the hip. We want to open up this hip joint. If we couple this with the fact that quite often our pelvis is tilted forward in an anterior tilt, we have an exaggerated arch in the lower back, which has a tendency to shorten the lower back and to pinch the spine. What we want is to take the bowl of the pelvis and tuck the bowl of the pelvis under. So we don't want to pour water out of the front of this bucket of the pelvis. We want this water bucket that's filled to the top, we want it tucked under so that our water stays inside. That means the pubic bone is pointed up in the direction of the nose, and we want our lower back to be nice and long. That is going to prevent pain in the back before you start moving. So we're doing several positions to open up the hip. If your hips are very tight and your hamstrings, there may be several areas that are tight, you'll find that when you go to do positions such as opening up your hip in plank steps, that this area is very limited. So let me step back for a moment. So you may find that your range of motion, how far your leg and your hip are able to travel, may be a little limited. So if you feel like you can't really get a big step to step your foot all the way outside your hand, you may find that you have to almost go around in order to open up your hip, and that is fine. We're going to make sure that respecting the natural flexibility of your body. So again, we're opening up. We want to bring some mobility, right? The ability to move inside of the joint to the hip, right? And we're actually also incorporating our core at the same time. The first movement, we're stepping the foot on the outside of the hand, opening up the hip. And the next part of that movement, we're stepping and we're landing with the heel. So in landing with the heel, it looks similar, but that's a totally different movement. We'll start to feel a big stretch in the hamstring. So the first movement, the foot steps on the outside of the hand. The second movement, I'm stepping, but I'm landing with my heel. And again, if your leg does not straighten all the way out, that's fine. You want to make sure that your stretches are only to the point of slight discomfort. We want to respect the body, not rip or tear anything. If you're consistent with your movement practice, your hips will open up, over time, right? All right. So that being said, also, if your wrists are weak, it's one of the areas that we can often ignore, the wrists and the ankles. But without the wrists and the ankles and access to the thumbs, then pull-ups, push-ups, there are many things. Squats, we can't do anything. Yet these joints and the little teeny muscles therein, we don't want to put weights, obviously, on them, but we do want to have stability strength. So that is going to include our shoulder girdle, the shoulder girdle musculature, and the ability for us to hold ourselves up straight and in alignment. So the wrist is down here at the bottom. So with good alignment, properly spreading the fingertips, we can start to add a good base of strength so that you can hold your body up. Now, of course, in all of the work, we don't want to just go on the wrists and the shoulders. That is also going to include, again, your core musculature and the groups, the different groups of abdominal muscles. So if you want a yoga block, if it is too much pressure on your wrists, right, if your hands are in flexion that feels too tight, periodically in between, you can stop in between the different movement patterns and roll the wrists out. This is also getting your core temperature nice and warm. It's going to warm up the entire body and start to bring some blood flow. If you are deep breathing, that's also going to help with getting the body nice and warm and pliable. So if you were standing next to you, a good litmus test that I like to use is that you should be able to hear your inhale and your exhale. And we're striving to lengthen our inhale and exhale and make them nice and deep and long. Keeping in mind the lungs are down here, not inside the throat. We want to take big, nice, long, deep breaths and be aware and see if we can synchronize the rhythm of our breath with the length of our movement. Right? So in this particular practice, we're inhaling and exhaling through the nose. So you have the option to use the yoga blocks. Sometimes yoga blocks can take a little bit of pressure off of your wrists if your wrists are very tight, or you can just use the floor. Right? So I'm in tabletop position. Again, I don't want to have any kind of arch in my back. I want to make sure that my hips are tucked under and that the belly button is drawn into the spine, so I'm giving my lower back some kind of support. Right? So from here, this is my modified position from tabletop position where I can step out and make the effort to step my right foot outside the right, spread fingertips and hands. And then I come back. I don't want my butt to go up in the air, my glutes to go up in the air. Come back to that tabletop position and step. Or you can, if you're feeling stronger, you can curl the toes under, straighten the legs out, and from here, you're going to take a step. Keep your butt out of the air, and then a step. So you're working your core, your upper body strength, and stability, and opening up the hips at the same time, right? So we're up to that second movement pattern. You can either take it from all fours. Keep in mind also, I'm not here. I want to make sure I have my knees spread so I have a wide base of support. So make sure you open up your knees so that your knees are underneath your hips. This is going to make you fall over. You don't have a wide base of support. This is more like a sturdy table. So I'm on all fours. My knees and my hips are in alignment. My wrists, my elbows, and my shoulders are lined up. So this would not be in alignment. 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 I'm going to bring those hands underneath my wrists and my shoulders, making sure that I'm spreading the fingertips, my thumbs, index finger, and pinky are pressed down flat into the floor. My elbows are straight, pressing away from the floor. My hips are tucked under. Belly button is drawn into the spine. Chin is slightly drawn in. My gaze is straight down. I have a light, nice, long neck in the back. So if I'm going to straighten my legs out, I'm going to curl the toes under, push the legs straight, tuck the hips under, press my hands away from the floor. And this is a little bit more challenging if you're stepping and landing on the heel. You'll feel a tremendous stretch in the back of your hamstrings. Make the effort to keep the hips out of the air. Step back to the center. And the opposite leg, you may also find that one side is tighter than the other. For me, my left side is usually tighter than the right. Back to the center. Now, if you can only do one of these, do one, rest, and come back so that you're going at your own pace. So as opposed to the foot flat, when I land gently on my heel, I feel more stretch in the back of my leg. Come back to the center and step out, land on the heel. Keep the hips tucked under. I'm stretching the bottom of the hamstring, and my core is working at the same time. One more time. Step to the right. Make an effort to keep the hips tucked under to the center and left. Good, and rest. So there's a lot of core, that is a lot of core stability. So I don't know if you can see, I might have to rotate this. Let's see, so that you all can see on this camera. So you want to make sure again that you have proper alignment where your hips and your knees are lined up, your pelvis is tucked under, your wrist, elbow, and shoulder are in alignment. Super important is that your firm foundation. If you're sitting at a restaurant at a table and the table legs are wobbly, you're not going to have a firm foundation. So in this case, your table legs and tabletop position are your arms. So you're going to make sure that you really exaggerate spreading your fingertips and your palms so that the hand is nice and flat. Pressing down with the pinky, the index finger, and the thumb, and then keeping all of the joints lined up. This will go a long way to keep your head and neck safe. Commonly, one of the most common injuries that I see in folks coming out of yoga class are their shoulders and their neck. And that is quite often because even the best yoga teachers sometimes in a full class can't get around to see you. They're not inside your body. And we may be muscling through the different positions, like we're really trying to, maybe perhaps our mindset is in muscling through a push-up, but that is not what the purpose of this is. So this shouldn't be aggressive per se. If anything, rather than aggressive or being as forceful as we might think of with strength training, it is more about being aware and active. So, for example, this would not be active. My scapula is winging out. It's not in alignment. My elbow is slightly bent. If I'm active in pressing my fingertips, my pinky, index finger, and thumb down into the floor, feeling the center of my hand, of my palm pressing into the floor, straightening out my elbows and thinking of pressing my hands away from the floor, actively engaging and tucking my pelvis under, drawing the belly button in, making sure my cervical spine or my skull, my head, is not dropping down. This is not in the proper alignment. Making sure I'm not exaggerating here, looking up, and I'm pinching down the back of my neck. I want to look downward, but my chin is pulled in, and I should always have a nice, long, flat neck. So even though I'm face down, it's very important that my spine is constantly in alignment, and my joints. Wrist, elbow, and shoulder are lined up and active, right? It's not aggressive, it's active. And I'm active. If I'm here and my guts are hanging out, that's a big difference. That is not active. So the goal is to be able to keep your core engaged, keep everything in integrity, that your spine is in alignment, that your core musculature, all of those different groups of abdominal muscles that work together are working together to keep your spine in alignment and to protect your lower back. So this is not active. This is active, right? And making sure that your knees and your hips are in alignment. Similarly, we want to make sure that our feet are in alignment, so we have nice long lines. I'm not overly rounded like a cat-cow. I'm in a flat back with my hips, even though my shirt is here, my hips are tucked under. So proper alignment is everything. Then next to just as important as the proper alignment is your breathing. Rather than, again, in contrast to thinking of muscling through postures or really trying to achieve a posture, the goal is really to, by getting uncomfortable, by staying in alignment, that is where your mind, right, that mental aspect of yoga starts to come into play. So for example, because I'm active, my arms are actually starting to burn because I'm holding myself in an active position. So although I'm not doing push-ups, I'm getting shoulder stability. It's active right now. My core temperature is hot. I'm starting to sweat because my body is active, right? I'm actively pressing my hands away from the floor. The more that I actively press, my arms are getting an isometric contraction. They're actually working, although the muscle is not shortening or lengthening, right? So in addition, I'm breathing. I have my inhale and my exhale while my core is engaged. The whole time we want to be mindful of not holding the breath, right? So that may seem like a lot, but when you hear instructors, they're taking their time to give you instruction. The goal is to paint a picture in your mind so you can kind of scan your body and do a check to make sure that your body is active and in proper alignment, and that the whole time you bring your attention more to your inhale and your exhale, that they're very pronounced and relaxed. That may sound like a lot. So what we're going to do is do a little, well, I'm not going to say a little, but a little bit more core. So we're in tabletop position. I'm going to curl the toes under. Now, if I press my hands away from the floor and just slightly think of lifting your knees up into the chest, right? So right here, that's active. I'm actually engaging all of my body weight. And from here, all you're going to do is tap the toe, and tap the toe, tap the toe, and tap the toe, and rest. So that's my whole upper body, again, working in an isometric contraction. That means my muscles not shortening or lengthening, but I can feel it working. I can feel it starting to burn. So again, my hands are pressed. This is, again, core. I invite you to think of core in contrast to just doing abs or sit-ups. We're getting the whole core body temperature nice and hot, right? So that's engaged. So I'm going to curl my toes under. Instead of being flat, I'm going to curl them under. Press the hands away from the floor. Bring the knees up a little bit. They lift up the foot. Think of bringing them into the chest. Tap the right toe and left toe right toe, and left toe, and rest. That is actually a lot of work and has me nice and hot and sweaty. We're going to take that one more time. So this is core activation. You're basically getting your core muscles, your different groups of the abdominal muscles and your core muscles to start talking to your brain, getting the nervous system, getting them on good communication and on one accord again. So press the hands with the fingertips spread, curl the toes under, press the hands away from the floor, lift the knees slightly up into the chest and tap the right toe and left and right and left. Good, and rest. So inside of our core musculature, we have our rectus abdominis that runs up and down, 6 or 8 pack as many would like to call it. Underneath that we have on the sides crisscrossing your internal external obliques. Then wrapping around we have the transverse abdominis that is like a girdle. And then underneath that we have your multifidus. So there are layers deep of these core muscles. And quite often we think of the ones on the outside. We want the ones that are deepest to the spine. We want all of them to activate, to work in concert with each other. Included in our core musculature is our glutes. The glutes are super important muscles. Shout out to natural glutes. Many of us culturally now, or in popular culture, is to artificially enhance the glutes. However, even if you're not very genetically shaped, everyone can develop for their body type a very functional, lifted for their body type glute just by training the glutes. And rather than think of like a bodybuilder, I invite you to consider, I like to look at the glute muscles as a diamond, and they have different heads on them. So we have gluteus maximus, we have medius, and we have minimus underneath. And we want, in order to train and have a balanced glute, now this is super important, it's not just for aesthetics. We will have a nice, balanced looking, rounder glute if we are moving in the different directions that the glute can move. If we are only sitting down on the glute for hours a day, then the glute starts to drop because it softens and it starts to atrophy, similar to a leg or injured leg inside of a cast. So because we are sitting on it, it flattens because it's not working, right? So if we would just incorporate, and this doesn't even mean necessarily a whole bunch of heavy weights. If your back muscles are compromised, if you have a very weak core, your glutes are actually going to help you strengthen your core. They work in concert with each other. So in adding context for why you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, more than likely you will be more efficient. Your form, what you look like, is going to follow your function. So we want to, in terms of function, is super important. We want to keep the hips nice and open, and the glutes are helping us to open up the hips. The hip is the bone and the structure. If we say we have big hips, I don't know that that's always that accurate, because we may have more adipose tissue or fatty tissue, the technical term for fatty tissue, sitting on the glute, and the glute may be not developed or maybe atrophied. So the composition, the ratio of lean mass to fatty tissue on the glute muscle, we may have more adipose tissue. That's going to come down to what it is that you are consuming peacefully. And if you are asking the glutes, if you're talking to glutes, you're giving them a command, you're giving them work, then your glutes are going to respond by getting stronger. And by getting stronger, those muscle fibers are going to get nice and dense. And that's where you will have a toned glute. If you are sitting on it and you're not walking on hills, or you're not adding any safe resistance, then the glutes will flatten and they will start to atrophy. And if these don't work, then that means that your back is picking up all that extra work. So let's open up our right glutes from tabletop position with your hips tucked under. We're going to make some big circles, external, opening circles with the right leg, right? Make sure that you're breathing. Ready? Here we go. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 big circles, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Now, sometimes when we're working with glute muscles, we can have a tendency, one, which will have us leaning over to the side. Also, you can have a tendency to feel this bottom leg working. So with the imaginary headlights that are on your hips, I want you to think of your headlights pointing straight down, both. So that means I don't want to lean over. I'm exaggerating. I don't want to lean all the way into the standing leg. So if I am doing external hip rotations, if I'm leaning over to the side, I want to actively tilt my pelvis so that both of my headlights on my hips are facing straight down. So that was external rotation. Now let's massage the lower back and let's continue to build mobility in the hips by going the opposite direction, right? With the same leg, hips are tucked under, belly button is drawn in, internal rotations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, and 25. So this will start to open up. You'll start to feel, well, you'll feel some of the standing leg, but you're definitely going to be feeling this glute that's working. Same leg, tuck the hips under. You're lifting the same leg out to the side as high as you can. Think of kind of like a little puppy at the hydrant, lifting legs or clamshell. You're going to open and shut. Lift that leg as high as you can. We're just going to take 15 repetitions. Again, your hands are nice and flat. Inhale and exhale, lift it out. 1, 2, try not to lean. 3, too much into the standing leg. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. And sit back for a moment. Your glutes to your heels. Relax your head down and walk your fingertips away from you. And then walk the hands back. Again, on all fours. So we're going to take the same thing on the other side. So again, your tabletop position. Here are your bottom table legs. Here are your top table legs. Ensure that, again, that you're really exaggerating, spreading your hands, your fingertips, your palms, open nice and wide, pressing the pinky, index finger, and thumb down into the floor. Checking again that your wrist is lined up with your elbow, is lined up right underneath your shoulders, and your hands are pressed nice and straight. So the opposite side, we're going to take external hip rotations. Again, your hips are tucked under, belly button is drawn into the spine. External rotations, ready, here we go. 1, big circles. 2, so try not to lean over into that standing leg. Try to get this opposite hip, the headlight, to point straight down into the floor. Synchronize your breath with your movement. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, big circles, 23, 24, and 25. Again, do a check-in that your hips are tucked under, the belly button is drawn into the spine. So now we're going to take the opposite side, internal rotations. Your internal rotations are also really getting you to get a little massage here in your lower back. And again, these strong muscles will take some load. If you're strengthening your glutes, will take a lot of load off of your lower back. Now, although there are some men folk that may consider these girly exercises, these exercises, even for some folks that lift heavy weights, there are actually a lot of folks, I found a lot of men that find these exercises very challenging because of the core integrity. It's not so much a show-offy exercise. However, these or these exercises can be very indicative of mobility in the glutes and also in the hips. And this could be an Achilles heel for many people that do lift heavy weights. So again, check your alignment, your tabletop position. Tuck the hips under, draw your belly button in, even if I can't see it. all the way in towards your spine. And now we're going to take internal rotations. 1, 2, big circles. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 5, 4, 3, 2, good, and 1. Now lift that leg laterally out to the side as high as you can. Again, try not to lean into the standing leg. Square up your hips so that both of your headlights, your invisible headlights on your hips, are pointed straight ahead. Right? Lift it out to the side. 1, 2, 3, as high as you can. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15. Good. Take a moment to sit your glutes back to your heels. Walk your fingertips away from you. Okay. So let's again continue to explore the hips. You're going to place your hands down on the floor and respect your body's range of motion. You're going to step out, and you can keep the yoga blocks handy if you need them. All right. You're going to step your right foot outside of the right hand and your left foot outside of the left hand. So kind of like a froggy position. Drop your hips and glutes down in the direction of the floor. So if you're not warm, or if your hips are tight, or maybe a combination of the both, you'll feel a lot of tightness here in your hip area. I want you to press your hands together, kind of like in a prayer position, and press your hands and then take your elbows and press them on the inside of your knees. And you feel a tremendous stretch there in your groin area. So quite often we're lifting lots of weights before we've done any kind of mobility exercises, which is included in flexibility, but it's a little bit different than flexibility. If your hips and glutes are tight and you're going to add heavy weight, and if you consider we sit down a lot, you could be exacerbating tightness. So perhaps you can't move to a full range of motion, right? And that can set us up for injury. Also, if we look at some of our Asian counterparts in their culture, it is quite often when I go to the parks, when I go to Chinatown, ride my bicycle to Chinatown and go sit in the park with the elder folks as they're playing dominoes and playing music and stuff like that. Those are some of the most limber people I know. I can see elderly people sitting like this instead of sitting in a chair, right? So we want to make sure we can keep the hips open. So I'm pressing the hands together, keeping my spine nice and straight, and pressing the knees open. Then I'm going to press the hands on the floor, pull your belly button into your spine, straighten, press the hands into the floor, and straighten the legs out. Let your head and neck relax down, right? Grab opposite elbows and allow your body weight to hang down and to release. Now, while I'm bent over, you want to make sure, even though I can't see it, you're striving to straighten out the legs. And as you're bent over, keep pulling your belly button into your spine so you always are creating some type of support for your lower back. Press the hands into the floor if you're able to. If you can't touch the floor, then you can use your yoga blocks to press and give you some added support. Press your hands into the floor and nice and wide, drop your hips down again. Press the hands together and press the knees open so you feel that big stretch in the groin area. Try to keep your chest nice and open. Place the hands on the floor. Press the hands into the floor. If you need a block, use the blocks. See if you can press your legs straight. Belly button here is drawn, even though I can't see it, is drawn into the spine. Pull your belly button and your stomach muscles away from your thighs. Grab opposite elbows and allow your body weight to hang down. Feel that big stretch also in the back of your knees. Make an effort to straighten your legs out. Press the hands into the floor again. Drop your hips and glutes down. Press the hands together and press the knees open. I can also, as I straighten out, I want to make sure my spine is nice and tall, that I'm not rounding the back. So I'll come from the side so that you can see. I want to make sure my back is not rounded. As much as possible, I want to open up the chest so I have a straight spine. Press the hands together. Press the Knees open, feel that big stretch in the groin area. Place the hands down, or you can use the blocks. Press your hands straight. Make an effort to straighten out the knees. Don't force it. You should feel a big, tremendous stretch in the back of the legs all the way up towards your hamstrings. Grab the opposite elbows. Let your body weight hang down towards the floor. Your head and neck is nice and long. Place the hands on the floor. Drop down. So we're going to add on to this stretch, right? Again, if you need the yoga blocks, you can keep them near you for extra support. So these are some really big stretches that go all the way down, stretches that can go all the way down to your lower back. So what you're going to do from this position, in froggy position, press your hands together, press your elbows together. Now we're going to get additional stretch. After I press my knees open, I'm going to take my right hand and extend my right arm straight. So I feel the stretch travel all the way down to my lower back. So I'm pressing my knees open. I'm going to extend my arms and see if you can straighten out the elbow and reach your fingertips to the opposite side. And that's a big stretch all the way down to my lower back. Good. Come back in the center. Press the knees open. And then opposite side. Extend that left arm. See if you can straighten out the elbow. Now the whole time I'm keeping this elbow pressing open on my knee. And I feel the stretch travel all the way along the side of my body down to my lower back. Hands come together. Press the hands into the floor. Press up nice and straight. Or, I'm just scratching my back. Or you can press the hands into the yoga block. Grab the opposite elbows. Let the body hang down. Good. Press the hands into the floor. Drop down. Press the hands together. Press the knees open. Extend the right arm. Reach the right fingertips over to the left side. Make an effort to straighten out this elbow. And you'll feel that stretch travel all the way down to your lower back. Back to the center. Press the knees open. Extend the left arm. Left fingertips reach over to the right side. See if you can straighten out your elbow. The whole time, my elbow down here is pressing my knees open. Come back to the center. Place the hands on the floor. Press the legs nice and straight. You can rock side to side for a second. Grab the opposite elbows. Let the body weight hang down. Feel that stretch travel. It may even be burning. If you're really, really tight, you may even feel a burning sensation in the back of your legs. So make sure that you're breathing into your stretch. Your breathing will help you get the body fired up, right, and nice and warm. Straighten out the legs, but don't force them straight. Good. Last time, press the hands into the floor. And press up. And slowly roll up. The head is the last thing to come up. So a little more core, but from a standing position. So I can keep my yoga blocks handy. Here's what I'm going to do. The right leg is going to be the standing leg. So again, I'm working on ankle, knee, hip stability. There's stability, there's mobility, and there's flexibility. They all are in the package of flexibility, but they're all a little bit different. So many of us may not be thinking of balance. We may try again to muscle through balance poses. Balance poses, if we're shaking, we fall over, we may be a little frustrated. But actually, this is really good to keep us injury free. So we're safely down on the floor. Whenever we pick up one leg, that leg that's on the ground, that's the standing leg, will be challenged in terms of balance. But it being challenged is actually how you're going to develop the balance. So my right leg is my standing leg. I'm being active in spreading my toes and trying to get my feet nice and flat. Being very mindful to press my big toe and my pinky down into the floor, and think of the four corners really pressing down into the floor. Also, if I squeeze my glute slightly, my hip joint is going to open up. Constantly want to keep this hip joint nice and open. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hinge or lean forward at the hips with my stomach muscles pulled in. So I'm going to lean forward, and as I lean forward, I can bend this back knee. It's going to touch the floor. I can even use my hand for it right now. So my knee has a slight bend in it. Both knees are slightly bent. I'm not bending so much up and down from the knee as I'm focusing on hinging from the hip. And I'm going to stand up, right? So again, from the side, I'm going to hinge forward. If I want to, I can even bring this right arm out to the side to give me a little bit more balance. I'm hinging forward, and I'm standing all the way up, and I'm squeezing the glute on this side. So this is really going to work stability. After a while, you'll feel your calf muscles, your thigh muscles, your glute muscles all starting to burn. So there are some men folks that may get a little irritated. Again, they may think these are girly exercises. These exercises help you to develop core stability and hip and knee and ankle stability, which will keep you free. If you see the leg is wobbling a lot, they may mean likely we don't have a lot of stability there. So again, I'm going to hinge and lean forward at the hips. Test the water temperature with that back toe, and then stand straight up. So this is 2. Stand up. Make sure you don't curl your toes, scrunch your toes. Flatten your feet out. So this is 4. And as you feel more comfortable, you don't have to touch that back foot down. But for now, you can touch that back toe down to the floor. Stand all the way up. Last 10. Standing all the way up, squeeze the glute. 9. Stand it up. 8. Now, if you're having a little bit of challenges, you can use the yoga block. You can lean and hinge forward and touch the yoga block down to the floor. Good, and stand up. And it's 8. Stand it all the way up. 7. Stand it all the way up, or you can use a hand. 6. Stand it up. So this leg should start to burn. 5. The standing leg. 4. 3. 2. Good, and 1. So you should feel, again, everything in the chain of muscles on this side start to burn. Again, this is just using your own body weight and ankle, knee, hip stability, and also your core has to be engaged at the same time as you're leaning forward. So we're going to do the same thing on the other side. My left leg is now the standing leg. I'm going to spread my feet and my toes. My big toe is pressing down to the floor, my pinky and my heel, so my leg is nice and grounded. I'm hinging or leaning forward at the hip. You can feel free to bring this left arm out to the side to help you to balance. So you're going to hinge forward at the hip, touch it down, and then coming up, this is 1. Exhale up 2, squeeze the glute so that the hip, this is closed, this is the open hip joint. Lean forward, this is 3. Stand it up, going for 15. 4. 5. If I want to, I can use the yoga block to help me a little bit, give me a little support. Or I can get rid of the yoga block. Now, again, keep in mind whenever you're leaning forward, you're going to make sure that you're actively, bring your awareness to drawing your belly button into your spine. That's helping you to protect your back anytime you're doing a forward bending movement. So it's not just a squat here, it's a hinge and lean forward from the hip joint, kind of like if I was doing, the rerun. And lean forward at the hips and come up. This is 5. Stand it up. 4. 3. 2. Good. And 1. So believe it or not, your core is also engaged in. So we're going to do a little bit more balance so you can take your time, right? This is not about muscling through. This is about when you're in balance, it can help you to turn on your focus because we'll have to be more quiet, engage the core in order to be able to balance ourselves. So now my left foot is the standing leg. Take your time. You're going to gently take your right foot and see if you can just slowly, you can assist it with your hands, pick it up and cross the right foot over the left knee. Stomach muscles pulled in. You can put the hands wherever you need to help you to balance. And I'm going to reach the hips back and sit down just a little bit. So reach your hips back and sit. Now as you sit, you're going to feel a big stretch. You should start to feel a stretch around your right hip. So you're going to drop down a little bit. Woo, feel that big stretch all the way going to your piriformis. Good, and stand. Woo. Take your time. Again, working on your balance and your focus. Take that right foot, cross it over the left leg. Use your hands if you need to. Woo. And sit back. Nice and slow. As the deeper down you sit, so your hips are going back and down, and you'll feel the stretch around this right side. Good, and stand and rest for a second. And then stand all the way straight up. Again, cross that right foot over the left leg and sit back. This is really great if you have lower back pain because it's opening up the hips. Good, and stand to the other side and shake out the standing leg. The standing leg usually is going to start to burn because you're working everything in the whole chain of muscles. So the right leg is the grounded leg. Spread your big toe and your pinky, and your foot is nice and firmly grounded. Cross that left foot over the right knee. Stomach muscles pulled in. Reach the hips back and down. Now one side may be more balanced than the other. As you drop down, you're going to feel that big stretch on the left side of your hip and your glute. And stand. You can rest the foot down gently for a second. Again, checking that your belly button is drawn into the spine. Pick up that left foot, cross it over the right knee. Reach the hips back and down and sit. Let the hip open out. So the more this hip opens out to the side, the more you're going to feel a tremendous stretch around your left hip and glute. Good, and stand. Stand all the way up. This is not open. This is an open hip joint when you squeeze your glutes slightly. Again, pick up that left foot, cross it over the right knee, reach the hips back, and sit. Good, and stand. All right, so just take a little bit more. Take a hip external rotation. So we're constantly doing rotations of the hip because that's what's keeping the hip nice and open. A lot of times this is shut down. So if I think of my pants really tight, if it was pulling me down this way, that's what the psoas and some of these muscles, they're so tight, and quite often we're dehydrated, so the hips are shut down. The hips being shut down limits our range of motion. That usually means we're going to be set up for injury when we're running or when we're doing weightlifting because we don't have mobility, right? This is a full range of motion. But if we don't walk and move in these different directions, we don't have the space to move, and then we put load onto it, and that can be a setup for injury. So we're just going to lift the knee and take some standing external circles. So this is 5, 6, 7, 8, and then internally, so this is 1, and I like the way 2, you're working your hip flexors. 3, 4, 5, working on your balance and coordination. 6, 7, and 8. So the hip flexors, I don't have to speak in code, are muscles that bend or flex the hip. So even though we're not adding weight, just your own body, but really lifting that knee up is going to work your hip flexor muscles in a very functional way. So external hip rotations on the other side. For 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now internal rotations. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now believe it or not, a lot of these movement patterns are excellent for your lower back. That is a common complaint of most of the population. The most common injuries are the shoulders, the lower back, and the knees. So everybody, we want to do the show-offy muscling through exercises and push-ups to show strength, which can kind of, I like to say, the ego will take out the host. We all have an ego. There's nothing wrong with a healthy sense of vanity. Though, just like we see with social media and Instagram, we look at other people and our ego is kind of triggered to compare ourselves. So we think, ooh, I want to do that pose. Or maybe perhaps we want to do something that is not appropriate for our body, or we are not warmed up properly. That's where we can ignore or not be dialed into where our body is, and we can injure ourselves. So mobility is super important. Mobility of the thumb, mobility of the shoulders, of the hips is very important to our longevity, right? So we don't have to, or we can make an effort to avoid hip replacements, right? We want to keep the hips, hip joints nice and open. So your glutes, people are thinking of the hip. The hip is a joint. On top of that hip are your glute muscles that are allowing you to pick up and move that bone and that tissue in different directions. So the hip is the structure, but it's the glutes that are on top. So we discuss this a lot in Flower Fit in the morning when we train. We do a lot of core exercises. We do a lot of corrective exercises and a lot of basic comprehension of why you're doing what you're doing so you can stay informed and you can translate what the movement patterns are and the why you're doing what you're doing. That's going to keep you safe and you'll be much more effective when you do decide to pick up a weight or if you do resistance training without weights, right? We want the longevity, the vitality, and to stay pain-free. And if we have any kind of mishaps or different things going on with our body, we don't want to come to a complete halt unless your doctor's told you to. We want to stay moving. When we don't move, the body starts to shut down. So, let me just check the time to see how we're doing on time. Let me see the time. Okay, so I think we're just about up for today because so much education, which is why I like to take our time. For many of us, there can be a learning curve. So to be consistent with a personal movement practice is so important for all of us, but especially for women. We can become disheartened when we see adipose tissue or water retention, or we have a lot of fierce, sometimes harsh, overly critical judgment and condemnation over our body or what it looks like. However, this body is a tool and a vehicle for us to be able to look, see, move about, and experience this life. So I invite you to perhaps just pause on your judgment and I invite you to a healthy sense of curiosity about why your body can do or can't do what it does, and to accept this is the body I have. It's still working. It has some kind of working capacity. I can love it to a new level. I want to challenge it, and do know the body responds to safe but being challenged on a regular basis. You have sometimes a long, slow learning curve, but if you take your time and understand what you're doing, you can get so much more out of less time. It doesn't have to take us years to strengthen the body, and if it gets stronger, your form, what it looks like, is going to follow your function. So consistency, showing up with healthy curiosity to your mat, right? This mat is considered your little home gym, your movement center, your personal movement practice area. I invite you to get a nice mat that is really colorful. Some of the cheaper mats are great to start with. Even if you had a towel, I would work with whatever I have. But I invite you to find a space that's very clean and clear of clutter, and to make it very attractive so you're enticed to want to go into that area to move and stretch. Feel free to use any of the videos that are inspirational, especially when it comes to education. They can be a good companion or buddy while you're decluttering, while you're cutting up vegetables, or while you're on your stretch mat. So if you understand what you're doing, you can relax into the breathing. It really can go a long way in you spending good quality time with yourself. You have a learning curve. It takes time to develop muscles. Or toned, fit muscles, and it takes time to open up the body, so we don't want to force it open, right? So let's just take a moment to set an intention for deep rest. You can definitely use your movement practice, and keep in mind, we don't want to be overly stuffed with food. So this is also part of like cocoon, a little tiny piece of cocoon, which I call going to the cocoon and bloom. Many of us can stand a lot more rest, and we are quite often being overly stimulated with a lot of fright and fear through these screens. So after we're done with our movement practice, now you can go lights out and sleep. This would be the ideal time. That hopefully that kitchen is closed. They're calling it intermittent fasting. Grandma Lou just said when it's dark, it's time for you to go to bed. There's no more food. The kitchen is closed. So now it's time for your internal organs to rest, and we can rest until tomorrow. Keep in mind, many of us habitually eat a lot of heavy food upon resting, but in working with the body's natural cycles, quite often we haven't passed or eliminated a lot of the fiber and the waste from the meals that we have already eaten. So the early day, you can think of it as a time where you're just digesting food. If you have a movement practice in the early day, and you're invited to come and move with me, 4:30 is deep breathing, relaxation, and journal writing. 5 o'clock is our Harriet squats workout. You can just show up with yourself. And so you will often find that you will eliminate a lot better when you have a movement practice. So kind of think if we can allow the body to digest those meals that are already there before we keep putting one meal on top of another meal on top of another meal on top of another meal that we haven't chewed properly and that we're not digesting. So your movement practice can be a great opportunity for you to have a deep, peaceful rest. right? It can be your cue as you signal yourself to wind down. So I invite you to take a moment to dial into your breath. Check in that your spine is in alignment, your belly button is drawn into your spine, your shoulders are round, down, and back. Dial into your inhale and your exhale. You're invited to set an intention for your rest tonight. You can intend to observe as your body repairs itself, as all of your cells and the groups of cells do their work to repair, and as they get ready to pass out waste. You can set an intention to have a deep, restful, restorative sleep where you awaken refreshed, well rested, and rejuvenated. Acknowledge yourself, or you're invited to acknowledge yourself for taking the time to pay yourself with the valuable currency of your time first and foremost. See if you can focus on something that brings a smile to your face, if that is a baby or someone you deeply care about or respect. Something that brings a smile to your face. See if you can hold that in your mind's eye and intend to take that smile into your rest this evening. I invite you to create some sweet dreams for yourself, where you can envision yourself painting, dancing, creating, speaking kindly to yourself, being considerate to yourself and others, where you're giving yourself permission to pursue your interests in the dream state. You can paint and create anything that you'd like, so you're invited to use your imagination to take advantage of the ability to visualize and to create. You can set an intention to work on your goals and see your goals already accomplished in the dream state with the power of your imagination, which is limitless. I invite you to imagine accomplishing and creating without any boundaries, with no limitations of people or money. See yourself generating and creating all the things you'd like to experience. And on that note, have a good rest, a peaceful, deep rest. Lights out, time to go into the cocoon and rest, and see you all tomorrow. Feel free to like, comment respectfully, subscribe, and we will be celebrating. This is how I like to celebrate. One of the ways I like to celebrate my Earth Day is sharing things that I think are fun and exciting, and you know that's going to be the garden, movement, and peaceful consumption. So if you don't already have the Discord link, feel free. If you'd like to be invited into the private Flower Fit coaching, there's life coaching as well as community, especially for all of my young flowers out there. Our goal is to keep our reproductive organs safe and in integrity and sacred. The same is intended for male folks. We want to create safe spaces, and self-esteem is not just a bunch of words that we are throwing around. Grandma Lou would say, you stay busy, you stay out of trouble. So let's see, like, what is there for us to study and to learn and to create and being rested and rejuvenated with a good dose of nature. These things are natural lifestyle practices. So sweet dreams. Fill out the Flower Fit community application if you're interested in coaching around living foods and fitness and healthy natural lifestyle. And I'll see you on the other side. Good night.